Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to your Rangers review morning briefing for Tuesday, the 20th of July, with me, Joshua, and Johnny. Johnny, how you doing on this another fine day in Glasgow? It's four in a row
Yeah,
now.
terrific. The weather's terrific in Glasgow. It's very unusual, as anyone who lives here can testify. But let's not complain about it, because we definitely don't want it to dissipate and go away.
No, absolutely. We're going to crack on, Johnny, and speak about the Champions League draw this morning. Rangers will play either Malmo or HJK Helsinki. What was your initial reaction when you heard those two names, Johnny?
I think ultimately you look at those names and you think to yourself, if Rangers want to get to the Champions League, these are the kind of teams that they're going to have to dispatch along the way. Malmo is obviously a famous European name. Rangers have been beaten by them before. Ironically, I think in the last qualifier in the Champions League that they played. But if you look at their recent history in European competition, they're no great shakes. They haven't beaten any notable teams, I don't think, particularly. And certainly HJK Helsinki are not a side that you would fear. Based around the quality of their leagues, and I can't say that I'm an expert on either team, but based around the quality of the leagues, you'd fancy Malmo to go through and it to be them Rangers face. But listen, Steven Gerrard, as we talked about yesterday, has created a really disciplined, modern, European, tactically sophisticated outfit that doesn't really have problems in these kind of games generally. Now, Malmo will be a test, but I think they've earned the right to feel confident going into games like that.
Yeah, I mean, I've got the recent European records in front of me. The last time Helsinki got to any European group, which was the Europa League group stages in 2014-15, they were knocked out by Riga in the third qualifying round of the Europa League last season. Malmo were knocked out by Granada, who did go quite far into the competition in the group stages of the Europa League last season. Last made it to the group stage of the Champions League in 2015-16. So, I mean, I tend to agree with you that we're going to have to play much harder teams in the group stage if we are to get to the Champions League. But I think, Johnny, realistically, maybe as opposed to us wanting to avoid them, they'll look at our recent results, beating the likes of Porto, Braga, going deep into the competition, and they won't want to play us, really, you'd imagine, will they?
No, they won't. I mean, they'll look at teams that Rangers have dispatched. Porto were particularly decent in the Champions League last year. Rangers beat them 2 seasons ago. Beating Galatasaray, Willem II were a good side in Holland, and they were absolutely battered. So it's just the case that Rangers now are a respected outfit at that sort of ranking of Europa League. So ultimately, that's the kind of ranking that Malmo kind of sit upon, isn't it? That kind of level, that kind of Europa League. So yeah, I don't think they'll be particularly fancying this tie, but they'll think they've got a chance, absolutely. But they'll look at the recent results and say to themselves, this is a tough tie.
Yeah, and the second leg will be at home as well, which I think is always a little bit of an advantage in qualifying. Great. Well, we'll move on to the news. The other news yesterday that came out of the camp, the Blackpool friendly has been cancelled, which I think was very disappointing for people who were looking forward to little midweek rendezvous in the north of England. Due to an ongoing COVID-19 issue, the club said within the camp, both clubs have decided it's sensible to cancel this fixture. Johnny, there's no real gain to go in and getting a COVID outbreak in our squad before our Champions League qualifiers. It's a sensible call.
Oh yeah, I mean it's just such an obvious one. The Rangers just cannot be taking any chances with COVID, and given what's happened down there at Blackpool, it's absolutely the right and obvious decision. It's really understandably frustrating for those fans who've organised travel and accommodation to go down there. So I really feel for them, because I know that there'll be a lot of fans who've looked at that fixture and thought, oh, that's going to be a tasty away day. It's going to be great to go down there in the sunshine, get a few beers, enjoy what Blackpool has to offer, and then obviously have the football. But from Rangers' point of view, there just really isn't a decision to make around that, Joshua. And it's just one of these unfortunate happenstances of this bloody awful COVID pandemic that's been gripping us for so long, is that people's plans are just torn asunder by this disease. And this is just another example of it. I really feel sorry for the fans that have gone through the effort to organise something, but it's just another one that we can chalk up to COVID, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. Tend to agree. What the first piece that went out this morning, Johnny, was your take on Connor Goldson, just speaking about his contract situation, his contribution last season. Do you want to speak on that a little bit first, and then we can maybe talk about what we think will happen with Connor?
Yeah, so I think there's a really interesting discussion we had about Rangers and their central defenders, just generally, because if you think about what they have at the moment, you wrote an excellent piece the other day about why Gerrard will probably prefer to use a left-sided central defender going forward. And he's got Philip Helander and Simpson as well. But other than those two, alongside Connor Goldson, you've got Niko Katic, you've got Leon Balogun and George Edmondson. So the six there, and that's before you start getting into the guys, the young kids who are coming through, like Leon King, who will need game time at some point. Whether that's with Rangers or out on loan, that's another story. So given Connor Goldson's contract situation, which is that it runs out at the end of this season, you say to yourself, well, is it normal that Rangers would hold on to this player, or would they look to sell him at this stage? And I think normally they would, but if he doesn't want to sign, or if he's not looking like he's going to sign. Yeah. But having thought about it quite deeply, I think with Connor Goldson, he's just such an important figure in that Rangers dressing room as the vice captain, as a leader of the defensive line, and as an attacking figure as well, Josh. I mean, you know yourself about these raking diagonal balls that are so accurate. His ability to stride forward, he's relatively quick and mobile for a central defender, so he can bring the ball out and progress past that press. And he's just got a skill set that it'd be very, very difficult, I think, now for Rangers to replace. And he's now an experienced title-winning captain. So what are you talking about for a Connor Goldson, age 28, coming up for 29, in the transfer market? In this depressed transfer market because of COVID, you're maybe talking £3, £4, £5 million. Obviously, we never know about these things, and it depends if there was a bidding war started between multiple clubs. But not a lot of clubs have that money. So, but if you're talking about, say, £3 or £4 million, just for argument's sake, is that worth losing Connor Goldson for that price for a season when he could captain Rangers, he could lead Rangers defensively to another league title, and he could take them into the Champions League? The reason I kind of get myself caught talking about Connor Goldson as a captain, which is disrespectful to James Tavernier, it's not meant to be, but it's just because he's such a defensive leader. He's an organiser. If you're watching the games and there's no fans, it becomes so obvious. He's the guy that's kind of like the cajoler at the back, the Richard Gough type figure. Whereas Tavernier leads by example and leads through his quality. And he's also vocal, but just not as vocal as Connor Goldson.
Yeah, definitely.
Just to clarify that, but I feel like Rangers are probably taking the right decision, which seems to be that they're fairly relaxed about the situation, and that if he signs a new deal, fantastic. If he doesn't, then he'll maybe go at the end of the season. Now, time will tell. It depends if Rangers get into the Champions League. There might be another decision to make further down the line. But I think Connor Goldson is too valuable to let go for anything less than serious money. And I hope that's the Rangers approach it.
Yeah, and you've in my piece that's going to come out about Goldson, I think it was 95.5% of Gerrard's games he's started. And in that piece we spoke about how we've had success without Morelos, we've had success without Tavernier, Davies, Kent, even at the start of 1920, but we don't know what this Rangers side looks like without Connor Goldson. And I think it's so easy to say, we're quite congested at centre back, but in my mind, if Connor Goldson isn't in that squad, there's no one there that can fill in for what he does. Maybe in a season, Jack Simpson will have developed and matured into that role from the left side of defence. But as you say, I think the way he hits those diagonals and takes ball into midfield has just improved tenfold since he came to the club. And we really don't know. We've got such a small sample size of he played every game last season. Such a small sample size of what what we will look like without Connor Goldson. So yeah, I'd tend to be of the same opinion, and I think he'll want to play in the Champions League. This is the thing we forget about when we talk about the potential of players leaving. Players will want to play in the Champions League. Players who have played, especially who have played a whole season without fans at Ibrox, no doubt they'll want to do that. And if they do then go to the Premier League, maybe that will be the season after. So yeah, I think it'll be fascinating. But I mean, he's the one player under Gerrard that has effectively almost played every game, regardless if that's Falkirk away in the cup or if that's Benfica away. And I agree. I mean, 3 or 4 million for Connor Goldson this summer would just be an insult to anyone with an ounce of football intelligence, because he's worth so much more than that. And part of the reason he came to Rangers was because he needed to get that first team football because of unfortunate setbacks out with his control. And he was a really top level defender when we signed him. So yeah, I really hope he stays, and I think he'll be really important if we do manage to have some success in the Champions League. Just finally, Johnny, we're going to talk about 2 other pieces that went up on the site this morning and yesterday. 2 really excellent tactical analysis pieces by one of our contributors, Craig Vickers, looking back in detail, as we have done throughout different aspects of last season, about the cup exits. We'll start with the League Cup exit, Johnny. Looking back on this game, painful, but maybe in my mind it showed that we had depth in certain areas of the pitch, but we also really didn't. And you've seen that when we didn't have Stephen Davis and Borna Barisic against St Mirren. Looking back on that game, it's painful to see the depreciation in talent in that game, certainly, that really didn't help us away at St Mirren.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think Bongani Zungu is no longer at the club, and that's one of the key reasons probably that game is he let his manager down. And Craig Vickers did a really good job of explaining why tactically Bongani Zungu didn't really quite click in that game with the rest of his teammates. Ultimately, I think, to be fair, I think what Craig kind of summarised from the 2 games, the first game at St Mirren, I think Rangers were quite unlucky overall, even though there was a lot of things that went wrong on the day. St Mirren had 5 shots at goal and scored 3 of them. So I think there's an element of chance in any football game, but especially in cup football. And Rangers perhaps just didn't quite have luck on their side that night. I think the St Johnstone game was a bit more of a tactical question around how clever and good St Johnstone were as a cup team, and they certainly offered a lot of threat. And I think that was a much more even game. And again, it was really fascinating to hear Craig's take on that. So I would advise anyone to check that out on the website.
Yeah, definitely. And you do. And the St Johnstone game, for me, was the one game in the season where it looked like a little bit of a throwback, and that we played in front of them quite a lot. And Craig highlighted that with the role of certain players. And listen, it's hard to criticise the team when they were so consistent, and the two slip-ups came in these 2 matches as opposed to 2 league matches against St Johnstone and St Mirren. I mean, you look at Calvin Bassey, might have endured a difficult night against St Mirren that night, but every player does. And you look at him at the weekend, he looked fantastic. And I think everyone at Rangers, certainly from a supporter's point of view, have really high hopes for him. And I think he looked right at home playing against a top-level opposition. But these things do happen, and you have to take into account that sometimes the other team set up with a really good game plan, put in a little bit of luck. You think of Morelos hitting the post against St Mirren. You think of us just not marking properly. Sorry, St Johnstone, us not marking properly the final corner against St Mirren. I think for me, what it showed, and this touches on what Gerrard was speaking about at the weekend, is we do need tactical variation. It's not that we don't have it at all, but I think teams know roughly what we're going to do in terms of the shape we're going to set up in. And maybe this season, having a complete other formation to change to, as Gerrard again spoke about, so managers don't become wise to replicating other teams' game plans and knowing exactly what Rangers are going to do. Personally, I think that could be a really, really interesting and important thing that we see in the next couple of seasons, of weeks of pre-season. I don't know what you made of Gerrard's comments, Johnny. I know you might have spoken about it a little bit yesterday in terms of Tav and Patterson.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting and heartening to see that Rangers are going to be continuing their evolution under Steven Gerrard with a new formation and a new way to adapt these two players into the team. I think I said yesterday, I think Nathan Patterson's a generational talent. So you need to come into the team as often as possible to continue his development. And as Stephen Gerrard said, you just need to find new ways of going at teams in the Scottish Premier League, because the Scottish Premiership, should I say, I get that wrong every time, because they will come up with ways to stop you. It's about defending your lot a lot of the time. They're sitting in a low block, and they'll find ways to stifle that 4-3-2-1 situation with the two number 10s that's worked so well for Rangers. So to have another string to your bow, it's going to be a major factor in the attacking prowess of the team going forward. I think you just have to look at Celtic not last season, but the season before, when they switched to 3-5-2 after the defeat at Ibrox. The defeat at Parkhead, the 2-1 game. Celtic completely changed the script. They ripped up the script because they moved to a 3-5-2. Teams didn't know how to deal with it. And by the time teams had realised how to deal with it, they'd won the league, or they'd got far ahead in the league before the league was stopped. So they were far enough ahead that they were in a really good position. So that's where I think Rangers can look to. If you change up like that, these teams struggle to cope with you because they haven't worked out yet what you're doing and how you're doing it. And just to be able to switch back and forward, it'll really, really cause problems.
Absolutely. Great. Well, I think we'll leave it there for this morning. Jonny, thanks for your time. We will be back tomorrow morning with another morning briefing from the Rangers Review. In the meantime, stay up to date with us on our website, across all our socials, and we will speak to you tomorrow morning. Have a good day.